I mean, I want to talk a little bit about how this budget and the funding for ICE has created this monster that Trump is now unleashing on the country. And Stephen,
Yeah.
this is for folks who don't know. This is from Polygraph as well. But this is the boosting ICE funding. Sorry about your things over the top. Boosting ICE funding is bipartisan, and it goes through year by year the significant amounts of money that the United States government has been funneling towards ICE.
Right. And I mean, not only is this history totally glossed over, which I think is why this chart and several others of mine gained so much traction, is because they add context to a debate that seemingly is partisan, but it's a bipartisan problem. Often, like a lot of the problems that people see, they identify with one party or another, but it's often like a bipartisan problem, which people have trouble accepting. I don't know if the people who only blame Republicans for ICE funding after seeing this chart are convinced. I don't know if I changed their mind at all, but I know people appreciate it. I'm glad you guys did. One thing I'll add is that if you pay attention to the Democratic Party discourse, I mean, I've read pretty much every. I don't know why I've picked Hakeem Jeffries, maybe because of his leadership status in the House, but I've read almost like everything he's had to say about related to ICE funding so far. So I've been ingesting a lot of Hakeem Jeffries' discourse. Otherwise, I've been living a pretty healthy lifestyle. I'm exercising a lot and that sort of thing, getting outside, touching grass. But if you do that same thing that I do, pay attention like to what Democratic leadership is saying, basically, and if you look at other Democrats, I think you'd find the same thing, is that they will criticize ICE on policy. They will not criticize ICE on funding. And the power of the purse is Congress's main thing. Yes, they do investigations, which Jeffries has talked about ad nauseum. Like, we will investigate, the ICE personnel who have accosted members of Congress or harassed them in various ways or not let them in facilities. At no point has he ever really made a serious threat to cut off their funding. And that's basically the one tool you have in Congress that makes you a serious actor. That basically defines the balance of power between the branches. Like, the Congress, the president proposes and the Congress disposes. That means they have the power of the purse. So this is how I view it, basically, and I think it's part of because I just have a weird view of politics where I see everything through the budget, basically, because that's where my specialty is. But I don't see Democrats being serious about anything unless they're backing it up with like actual threats that affect the redistribution of wealth, the budget.
I'm sorry, it's just like they're loading the pistol up, right? And they're shooting it too, don't get me wrong. And then they're handing it to the madman, right? Like this whole situation here where like, you have like these increases in the ICE budget under Democratic control. You also, that on the other end, like there could be another kind of Trump figure. I'm like, unless they are so politically naive that they think that they sort of vanquished that threat, right? Or that there wouldn't be somebody who might use these powers in a way they might disagree with
I
in the
mean, God
future.
forbid, David, because what are they going to run on if that threat was ever
Well,
judged as vanquished?
I mean, I think that that's also part of the reality too, is that like they're not too worked up about this. They like to be able to run against it. They like to be able to use it to mobilize and motivate people to donate and support the Democratic Party. But like the actual on the ground, they're not too worried about the consequences, or at least they accept them as a necessary part of their politics.
I mean, this
And
sounds
it's,
exactly like. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
I was just saying they're insulated from it. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah. No, that sounds exactly like the conversation around military spending too. It's like if it's the Democratic Party is basically like that commercial from like 2020 where it was like Kylie Jenner or someone handing the Pepsi to the riot cops during the peak. That's basically the Democratic Party. It's like under no circumstances can you actually threaten the funding of the security apparatus, even though you know that if you lose control of the White House, that there's a good chance that something really, those violent apparatuses will be used for something nefarious, typically at home. The anti-imperialist crowd, for those listening, because I know there's a bunch of listening to this show, we're having a great time right now because we're talking about the imperial boomerang. We're talking about colonial reflection, Amy Césaire, Frantz Fanon, Michel Foucault. I mean, this is great. Hannah Arendt. We're talking about that, imperial blowback. We can talk about Chalmers Johnson as well. So we're just having a great time with all this. I mean, this graph that you pulled up here, I can't explain to you how long this graph took to put together. Oh my God. A lot of these graphs actually do, because they look like they're just like machine printed, but like I swear to God, these things take forever.
Oh, I'm sure. Having fiddled with those things in the past, but I mean, this going back to like that kind of question of like colonialism and imperialism. I mean, this literally is those systems coming home, right? This is like the graphic budget form of all those arguments.
And just for
Yeah,
folks
yeah.
listening, what we're looking at is a graph from Stephen's blog here. As U.S. troops, StephenSemler.com, as U.S. troops left Iraq, their combat gear went to police, and then just overlaid U.S. troops deployed in Iraq, and then value of Pentagon property acquired by U.S. police. And like, I feel like this was like part of Grand Theft Auto 5's like narrative, or maybe Grand Theft Auto Vice City, or like this sort of thing is what like pretty much any anti-war activist would say. Like, this is what we got to look at, and it's just happened. Like, and that graph proves it.
I can't explain. Like when I first saw that, when I first plotted it out, I was like, no fucking way. It's like it lines up that closely. But I controlled for it, and I only looked at this one particular bit of equipment that was developed for Iraq. The MRAP, those giant like vehicles, mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicles. The V is left out of the acronym, but I tracked those too, and it follows the same curve basically. So it makes sense. Like once troops came back from Iraq, or at least most of them, because there's still U.S. troops there. But once the majority of U.S. troops come back from Iraq, their equipment followed them basically. And then the way the Pentagon system works, the way it deals with excess property, is it doesn't like to hold on to excess property, because that makes it harder to justify buying new stuff. There's actually a study, and forget that, and they hate buying new stuff. They don't like it to have it stored in warehouses either, so they offload it. And it's either to like the global periphery, the third world. I don't know what the PC term for it is now. Global South. That sounds wrong too.
Yeah, I think.
But it either goes to like, enforcing order in a very poor country, or enforcing order in, a very rich country, but in, back in the metropole, basically. So a study found actually like how desperate the Pentagon is to get rid of excess equipment. 1/3 of the acquisitions that police get through this program, it's called the 1033 program. It's, how police acquire military equipment from the Pentagon for free. 1/3 of the equipment transferred through the program was brand new. It was never used by the Pentagon at all. And the really frustrating part about that graph is that it's really fixable, because the 1033 program, which again is this excess property program that delivers military equipment to police, it's a loan program technically. So that means you just get the commander-in-chief to say, okay, just sign an executive order, all equipment that's controlled property, which is the serious stuff. The uncontrolled property is like t-shirts and like computers and like excess equipment that's transferred to the program. But like the military gear, the actual military stuff, like the MRAPs that I mentioned, the guns, the grenade launchers that are used to fire either, usually just tear gas canisters and less lethal rounds, at air quotes there, at reporters. Basically, but what I'm saying is Biden could have just ended this program basically, and not only ended it, stopped the flow of it, but actually yanked taken military gear off the streets, and he didn't do it.
I mean, really, like what we're seeing right now in Los Angeles, and like in national politics, right? The attempts to like limit free speech, all this stuff. Like obviously, I think a lot of people are thinking about Gaza and what we have seen for years there. But there's another line I think that goes through this, and your graph, going back from 2003 to today, really highlights it, which is the fact that there are like two buttons that the government can press when it comes to funding, right? Because you have to like stimulate the economy somehow, right? You got to be able to put some money out to the public. And the one that the federal government likes to do is the military, and just spend as much. That's like the one button that they press, because they don't want to like improve general like livelihoods and wages for everyday folks. But the military is the one thing that they'll sort of press, because there is like a whole. We talked about this last week. The whole kind of cottage industry around, military procurement. But then on the city and the municipal and the state level too, those budgets are completely gutted for social services for folks. Like the one budget that continues to rise, and the button that they press is like the police budget, right? And seeing how those two things are so connected actually, between the Pentagon budget, and then seeing, that millions of that stuff being given for free, but to sort of facilitate, this violent but cheaper option than social spending on the municipal level. I mean, these things are deeply, deeply connected to like the bizarre country that we live in right now, where our government has tremendous amounts of money and tremendous amounts of resources, but there is a complete refusal to, I don't know, invest in like healthcare for people, or invest in education for people.
Yeah, I remember I did a breakdown of Trump's budget request, and basically what it shows is that 3/4 of it goes to military or federal police. And then one of the replies, actually more than one of the replies, was a graph from the LA controller,
Hmm.
who does awesome work and makes is a fellow graph aficionado, Kenneth Maya or something, Meija, I think. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm a huge fan of his work. That dude, what he does is so impressive. And his graph for the LA city budget was like, it looked like the one I made for Trump's budget. So that speaks exactly to your point, David. It's like, I don't know which one came first, really, but I suspect these two things are mutually reinforcing.